Well, hi everyone, and welcome to Adobe Live from wherever you are around the world. Welcome to this awesome session called 3D for Beginners. Now, before we start, we'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we live, create and learn on today, paying respects to elders past, present and emerging. My name is Chris Hansen and I'll be your host for today, and joining me is my colleague, 3D specialist at Adobe, Alwyn Hunt. Welcome, mate.
Hey Chris, how you going, buddy?
I'm not too bad, actually. I'm really excited for this session.
Have you managed to have a play with 3D Modeler yet?
I've had a bit of a play. I haven't had a play in the virtual world, though, which is what I'm really interested to see. Just before we actually get into that, though, if no one really knows what you do or who you are, just maybe give us a little bit of a background on that.
Yeah, just quickly. So I have a background in visual effects where I specialized as a character texture artist. It was a pretty cool title to have, where I just got to do crazy characters for movies. I was fortunate enough to be one of the artists on Smaug the Dragon for the Hobbit. So that was kind of the pinnacle of my career. Worked on Game of Thrones, Thor, Ragnarok, etc. So I've been at Adobe now for a few years, where I'm sort of utilizing my experience within that industry to now bring it to people that are interested in 3D.
Man, I love that. And I think one of the things that you told us when we first met, you used to have a title called, was it creature artist or creature designer or something like that?
Yeah, it was the 3D character artist. So it was just specializing in doing characters for big films. It was an amazing job to have.
Amazing. How's that for a title? Mate, I'm really excited for today. We've got a few things lined up. Maybe just talk us through what you're gonna show us. Or even as well, you did a session on Tuesday, which is kind of a two-part series of what this is today. I'm interested to see what we do.
Yeah, so it's just really a continuation on. So as I mentioned to the viewers on Tuesday, the modeling 3D Substance 3D Modeler app, sorry, it's always a mouthful to say, is both for desktop and for VR. So on Tuesday's session, I took people through sort of the basic functionality on the desktop. And for today's session, I really want to be able to show people how to connect to the VR headset, what headsets are actually compatible and what you can use, and then just do a basic, really just fun little character. I'm not going to get technical with it. It's just what I love about Modeler is just it kind of almost takes me back to my artistic days of sculpting with a piece of clay, and really there's a lot of freedom and just exploration that you can have within that world, which I genuinely have really appreciated doing this session actually.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, we'll have to see, you'll have to start sharing your screen for us to see that, which is going to be good. But also, just take us through how we would start the setup process. Like, if I'm someone who wants to go into the 3D world, what do I need? Do I need a beefy computer? Do I need, obviously, the virtual reality headset, but which one should I get? That kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a great question, actually. And for those people that are starting out, I've got a page, and we'll put it in the chat as well. But there is the main sort of document page for Modeler. And in here, if I do just click on the link called Getting Started and just do a look at this, there is system requirements. And if you go in here, if I click in here, it will also, it'll give me the specs, the recommended specifications for each of the types of machines, whether it's a Mac or a PC. It's actually not supported in Mac right now, which is
a lot of Mac users are probably dropping off right now.
Yeah, I know Johanna is like kicking herself, but it is coming. It is definitely coming. So it's just a matter of time. But if you've got a PC, this is the sort of recommended specifications that you should have for your machine. In terms of supported VR headsets, you scroll down here, you can see there's a list of the ones that are currently supported. By the end of the year, there are going to be more to add it to this list. So I'm looking forward to that. So it'll just make it more accessible for people. So this is definitely a great page to come to. There's, all the shortcuts, which I covered last week, and reference images and all the different links here, an explanation on all the tools that you get within that as well. So it's a lot of information, but definitely the main page you need to come to.
That's fantastic. For someone who's starting out, obviously this is a beginner series, but this is a great resource to have. Just on those supported headsets, do you envision obviously more headsets to come out, later in the year or next year that'll have support? Or I suppose the right question to ask is, future headsets, will they support modeler?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I was just saying, there's going to be more being supported before the end of the year. So it's literally around the corner for some of these other headsets. So absolutely, the idea is to get people using it on whatever headset you've got.
Fantastic.
Cool.
Well, I'd love to see what we're going to do. Should we started?
Yeah, what we're going to do before I click off this page, and to be very honest, when I was setting this up, I was trying to figure it out, and I'm like, oh my goodness, and I was coming into the documentation, and I was like, what I wanted to do first, Chris, was really go through the process of connecting it with with your computer to the headset. And there's actually an important, and it's bolded down here, and I completely missed it, but your headset must be connected to a computer with a compatible cable or air link. So that compatible cable is really important, because with the Quest 2 headset, you're completely wireless. So it was actually quite foreign me to go back and go, oh, what? I need to actually plug this thing in. But for this, you do. And what I've got the USB-C, and it's a 3 meter long cable. You can pick them up at any, sort of hardware or electronic shop. So I've got that, and it more than fits the job for what I need it for. So I'm going to run through that process. But before I do that, I just wanted to pay respect to the concept artist that I'm sort of doing my model on today. So this guy is called Matt Dixon. He does this cute little robot character, and if I just minimize my screen, this is in sort of tribute to his artwork. So we're going to do this in Modeler. We're going to export it out. We're going to bring it into Substance Painter, and we're going to bring it into Stages. So there's a lot of processes. So I need to probably get started, and I can show you what that looks like. So
fantastic. And to be honest, it's got a little bit of a resemblance of The Iron Giant, if anyone's seen that film. I really like it.
Love it. Yeah.
Really
so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click. And one thing to know before I even launch Modeler is you need to have an Oculus account to obviously talk to your headset and so forth. So when I click on Modeler, what that does, it actually launches Oculus, my little desktop application here straight away for me. So I'm able to make sure that my device is connected. As you can see, at the moment, it's not. I also have Modeler, which is running in the background here. So I'm just going to minimize that while I'm connecting this up. So I'm going to plug in this cable into my laptop. Got it there.
And I've just got a question around equipment, right? In terms of the headset itself. If I wanted to buy an entry level, how would I pick the best one?
Yeah, I mean, for Modeler, you'd look at that list that actually supports it to start with. I mean, Quest 2 is amazing, just because again you're wireless. You're not being sort of restricted by all the cables and so forth. I've absolutely loved this. The kids love it. It's so easy to use, and if there's no setup at all, you just flick it on and you're away running. So I think these are around $500 now or something, but there's new models coming out. You could probably pick some up, secondhand or whatever. They're still really, really good. But yeah, I'd recommend the Quest 2. So I'm just jumping in now. So I've got my.
Before you do that, make sure your audio is set so that we can hear you. Doing some tests at the back end.
All right. So I've just jumped that across.
Brilliant.
And what I'm doing is I'm going to put on my headset. Going dark. Okay. So once I'm inside, and I just need to grab my controllers, which are over here. I'm going to stand up off my chair in a minute. But once I'm inside and I've got, it's fully launched and stuff, what I can do now is there's a little quick settings menu, which is part of your dashboard when you first jump into the Oculus surround environment. So I'm going to click on that, and then there's a request there, and connecting to your Wi-Fi. You've got various settings in there. The third one is Quest Link. Now I'm going to click on that and I'm going to launch that because I want to connect now to my headset. So I'm going to push out of my chair. I'm going to stand up and hopefully something comes up on the screen. Can you see that?
Okay, we can just see your chest, but we can't see anything on screen yet.
That's cool because I need to just maximize modeler there and bring that up. Okay, great. So I've got that and I'm just going to go File and I'm going to go Open. And I'm going to just bring in one of the little characters that I've done previously before. I'm going to click on that, robot, we've got modeler, and I'm going to bring this guy in. And we're just going to see what that looks like. So I'm going to put my headset back on. You can see that little character, it's just kind of loaded in that top corner.
And while you're doing that, anyone online, any questions, feel free to shoot them into the chat while Alwyn's getting set up. I'd love to ask him some questions around what he's doing this from the audience. That'll be great.
All right.
Wow,
can you hear me okay, Chris?
I can hear you, yeah.
Okay, cool. Can you see the robot as well?
Yeah.
Excellent. So that's one that I prepared earlier, like any good cooking show, Chris, as we know, Jamie's favourite saying. So we've got that guy there. So what I can do there is actually, I'm just going to select him and I'm going to click on, I'm going to just click B for him, select him, and I'm just going to actually bring up my palette here. And what I want to do is just actually hide him. Now, you can see my palette here. Now, if I use the thumb control of my right hand, I can actually toggle through palettes here. Now, that's as complicated as it gets, but there's a visibility icon here, and I'm just going to go hide. So we're going to start from fresh.
I love that.
So
just as you had that up, I noticed the panel system is very familiar, like to a Photoshop or Illustrator. You've got all the similar kind of elements. So anyone who's jumping in for the first time, they wouldn't necessarily get overwhelmed with it.
No, exactly. It's they on purpose have set it up in such a way that it is, it's not feature heavy, and it's all about just keeping it super simple, especially when you're in this 3D environment. So we've got our hand controllers. The left hand one is really our support, and the right hand is all about the tools, right? So I can be doing stuff like go back in here, and I'll just do because I've got it on single at the moment. I'm going to do like this, and I've got my clay brush selected, and I can actually move this one as I want, or if I just want to paint straight down onto another object, then I can. I'm just basically blocking things out here. So the control, this right hand side.
I was just going to ask you, sorry, how are you duplicating that? Are you pressing buttons to do that?
Yeah, so when I do it, so again, I'll start with my basic shape here, and I can just reset that. And is it going to, looks like it's just wigged out on me a little bit. So let's just go all the way back. So if I do the left mouse control, it actually doesn't undo. So you can see now that character. I'm going to bring back that palette. I'll just talk about that in a minute, Chris. And we go back to visibility. I'm going to hide that guy. So let's go back to the palette. And for some unknown reasons, that is.
Is it a layering thing? Do you have to be on another layer because you hidden the other one?
I feel like that's just kind of. I need to maybe just reset that actually, because it feels like it's not doing anything when I go there. There should be a basic shape that comes up there. Just let me reset it. Sorry, Chris. Oh, hang on. It come up.
Oh, did it?
Oh, no, it's showing on the actual... It's showing... Can you see it on the... Oh, that's strange. Sorry, this is...
Yeah. Oh, no, it's not showing up for me. I can't see that.
Oh, you know what? There you go. Let's do that. There we go. Let's go there. So I've got that object now. I'm going to scale that up. I'm just going to do that. I'm going to position him slightly above there. I want to now create that robot's head. So I've got that basic sphere. I can manipulate that by changing some of these sliders. I'm just going to add a fillet there. Maybe I'll just scale that down at the bottom. And I'm going to cut off the bottom of his head there. So what I do, I need to apply this. So once I've created a shape, I push the front trigger on my right hand, and that applies it. So now I've pushed it once, get that out of the way. Whoops, if I was to move, I need to apply it. Make sure that's applied. And then, oh, why is that not applying? Do that, apply. And I'll scale it out.
Oh, I see something.
Yeah, you can see it there now. So you have to apply it. So I've got that shape. Now I'm moving into my next shape. So maybe I want to change it. So I'm going to change it to a square. If I want to reset everything without moving the sliders, I can just click on that same shape twice. You can see there that it's actually changed it back to the default size.
Oh, I see.
So I'm going to scale that up. And if I hit B on my right hand controller, it changed the color of that object to this red. So that's now I'm in the erase tool. So I could have accessed that up here, but I'm just using the controller to do that. Now, if I apply again by hitting that front trigger, and I do that, you can see now it's removed that bottom section, which is cool. So now I want to be able to add some eyes. So I'm going to go back and get some basic shapes. So I've got this sort of capsule shape here. Again, it's not the size I want it to be, so I can either scale it down on my palette here, or I can do the scaling there. Now I want to just position this, and there's a couple of ways I can use that gizmo or the transform thing that's around it, or I can come down here and go, actually, I want to place that on the surface myself. So I've got that object there, and you can see it's actually on the end of the controller now, but I'm not happy with that. I might go back to gizmo mode, and placement I'm going to do by hand instead. And then you can see there now it's in my hand, and you can see it's still on erase, which is what I want. So I'm just going to cut into that and basically cut out the eyes. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to hit the apply. Whoops, I'm going to go back to erase, and I'm going to hit the apply. And do that once, and then do that twice. Now I've cut that in. Now that you can see that's my eyes. So to rotate around this object, I'm using the side triggers. Basically, I can use one or two or the combination of both to rotate. And if I pull in and out, it's scaling the object up.
You can get in really close. And I think what's interesting is I think a lot of people will try and physically move forward into it, right? But you don't need to do that.
You don't need to do that. You can just use those handles to be able to to be able to rotate the object around, not actually rotate yourself. So I've got this object there. I'm just going to create a little neck there. So I'm just hitting the B key, and it's allowing me to do that manipulation of that object without actually going into the palette. So I can do something where I've got a little neck, and maybe I'm something. I'll just do it quite small, actually, something like that.
Question about what you're currently doing, right? How do you know if it's the dead center? Can you have like snapping tools that snap it into the center?
Yeah, there are snapping options. So if I do, I'll do something like that, and I can actually, if I go back into the so the transform mode or this gizmo mode is a lot more precise, and you can position things a lot kind of easier. And if I use, I think it's B, it will actually snap to certain points, or is it if I hold the trigger up? If I do the thumb toggle, the thumb stick there, that will actually scale the object up and down. There is a shortcut, and it's just I forget what it is now, but it actually will snap to objects. I thought it was B. But I'm not 100% sure there, Chris. But we can go back in there, and I'm just going to push that shape to push that. Okay, so I'm going to push that across. See if it will move.
Yeah, so another thing I was thinking about as you're doing this is like perspective, right? Like, how do you actually get a sense, because you're in the virtual world now, so how do you get a sense of the perspective, not only from a scale point of view, but even like, visually in size?
Yep, sorry, my time is going on. I had to set the time to make sure I wasn't going too crazy. So yeah, scale is an interesting one, especially when you're working in 3D. Whoops, we've gone over there. So see when it gets lost like that, that's where you're using those side controllers to go, okay, cool, get back here. I want you back in front of me.
Yeah.
So scale is an interesting one because you actually you don't want to, model something on that because there's a resolution problem if you get really big. So you just want to keep it quite small in front of you. There is a actual grid here. So there's an option here where I can hit the grid, and that will just help me kind of orientate like the scale of things, right? So that I know, oh, okay, cool, I'm getting too big or too small. So you can flick that on. I prefer just to work with it without it. So I've gone back here. I'm just going to go back a couple of steps. So we've got our little object here, and I might just bring that back into.
I just had a thought as well. As you're in this environment, right? Let's say you get it to a point where you want to actually see it in a physical environment. Can you see how the background's like this dark black kind of thing? Can you switch that background off and actually see your current surroundings with the 3D model that you've built in like an augmented reality experience?
You can't change out the background at the moment. But it's just in this sort of this grey space. I don't think you can even change the color. Actually, I haven't seen that before. So the other cool thing is I'm doing sort of basic primitives and shapes here to build this out. There's actually stamps, and you can see here there's a few different folders. I can move across here and go, okay, cool. I'm going to select into the mechanical one. And there's a whole bunch of sort of pre-built shapes for me. And you can see here that if I scale that guy up, and I'm going to do that. Actually, I might just do that, and I'm going to stick that placement. I'm going to do it on my hand, and we'll bring that to there. And I'm just going to scale that piece up. You can see there's already sort of pre-existing pieces. What's cool about this is that I can just actually just go through and select some of these big shapes. So maybe I'm going to do this guy for the body. And they do what you call kit bashing, right? So you can actually, instead of going through and actually building out these shapes by yourself, you can just put them in spots and start building certain areas of it. So maybe I want to do something like this where I'm just adding onto it. Now, this is the frame of the whole thing. You shouldn't be scared about just adding bits and pieces.
Yeah.
Going through, I'm going to just add sections here for the arm. Again, I'm using my controller to be able to place this. I can use the thumbstick there to be able to scale that down. I'm just going to add sections to that. So I might add that piece for the leg there, for the arm, just hitting each of those sections, just quickly populating this out, right? So it doesn't really matter. This, you can just keep creating it. You can have fun with it. So for the legs, I'm going to just add some other sections here. So I can go back through. I'm just going to look through what we've got in our list. There's some cool parts here. Maybe I'm just going to add this sort of bar section, which just adds to a robot. I'm just going to add it to there. I'm just building it out. If I don't like it, I can remove it, or I can add it to a different part of it. I can scale that up, push it in, and just keep adding sections to it. I'm just letting my creativity just sort of take over.
I love that. Freedom to create, mate.
Freedom to create. So I'm going to grab these other sections. And these are kind of quite ideal for, maybe limbs or arms or something like that. I'm just going to tack that piece on. And again, if I don't...
Those pieces that you're putting on, right, they're clay kind of thing. And can you, because they're already, I suppose, 3D objects, can you easily, mold them? Can you manipulate them even?
Absolutely, yeah. And I'll show you what that looks like. I'll just add these legs on here. And I'm just adding sections here, so I can just, it doesn't have to be touching or anything. I can have that still floating in space, and I might add another section as the knee. Again, maybe this leg sort of comes out. Maybe he's running, so we can have the leg coming. Again, I'll just position, make sure I'm working at that good. And I'll have that leg, maybe I'll have it coming up like that where he's running. So I'll do that. Get that sort of angle there.
Question from the chat. Are you able to model more than one thing at a time, organizing them almost like a flat lay to keep track of it all?
Are you able to model one thing? Yeah, absolutely. Like this, I can assign these to various layers and then hide those layers. So you've seen before how I was able to hide that model that I'd already created. So you can absolutely just push that section over to there, start another section, and really build out environments. I can group this whole object to be one object, and just keep on building within this environment. I can actually, I'm just going to add that section there as a foot. So I've got my foot now, he's sort of running along. The cool thing is as well is I can just keep adding sections to it. So maybe I want to actually use some of these primitives and I just want to give him a bit of volume in the leg. I can grab something like this and then I can use this guy here to be able to kind of, I'll just enlarge it up and then I can actually position these types of shapes to his leg, just to kind of give it volume. And I can do boom like that. Oops. Yep, that got added. So you're kind of just starting to, work in between that sort of mechanical and thought. So again, maybe I just want to give him a bit of volume down here so I can just control the size of that. And I'll just do something like that. So there's loads of flexibility here. I'm going to add some of those joints. We'll just do a bit of a knee joint here. I can scale that down.
I'm actually amazed at how quickly you're doing this as well. Like you're grabbing obviously pre-built model, like 3D models, but you're just building out this character right in front of us.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be precise with it. Just having fun. I'm just sculpting, right? So again, maybe I wanted to, and actually, if I selected this character, so I could go back up to my selection tool here and just click on that. I can then right-click on my menu here and see there's an option, and I'm just going to toggle across my menus, that I could save this whole thing out as a stamp. So I could make my own shapes, go, cool, I'm going to add to my library, and I'll just do it. You can see there it's saving onto over here. If I go back into my menu and I go back up to those stamps, click into that, and I go back to stamps, and I'll go back to the main top level there. I've now saved it as a stamp, right? So I've got a couple variations there of this rock. I might drop back into this one, and I'm going to use something like this. Actually, I'll use, I'll go across one, and I'll just use this guy here. And this is just a bit of a bar, scale that up. I'm going to use this as an arm, do that. And he's running, so his arms are going to be quite, sort of dynamic. Add that there, and there's other arm. Again, you kind of get caught sort of trying to walk around it, but actually you can rotate around them so that I can have that coming out there. And if I wanted to scale it down a bit or up a bit, I can do that using the thumb controller. And then we've got this little character that's running, right?
That's brilliant. Look at it.
And the last bit that I'll add before we kick it across into Painter is this, and I'll go primitives because every cute robot has a little touch of hair on the top, and we can do something like this. Oops, where I'm just going to position this guy, and I'm going to scale it. Hey?
Alfalfa.
Alfalfa.
Yeah, let's call him that. Alfalfa the robot.
There you go. So I'm going to do something like that. And again, maybe I'll just drop that down a little bit. I'll commit to that. So I like that little piece there, and it's got a little hair tuft on the top. Cool thing is, as well, if I wanted to just sculpt directly onto, and look, actually, when I was doing this, the original one, what I loved was just being able to come into some of these shapes here, and I'll bring this brush up, and I'm going to do some warping. And I've got an inflate tool, I've got a smooth tool, and I've got this warp tool here. So if I wanted to kind of break up some of these edges so they weren't so sharp, then I can just come through and just start playing. I'll just enlarge that a little bit. So you can just start breaking up some of those solid edges really quickly, because he's a fun little robot, this one, but he gets into a lot of trouble, right? So you can start breaking up and just really just adding some character to them.
Yeah.
Really,
Otherwise, it looks too refined, like it needs to have been smashing into a few things, having a good time, the little alfalfa the robot.
That's it. And then you can just, even just do a little ding up there or whatever. So again, controlling the size of that radius of the thing, you can just quickly start moving that mesh around. Now I've got I think I'm going to do the last little bit here, and I'll go back into my stamps, and I've got a hand already sort of done because that took a little bit of time. So I've got kind of a hand, and I'll just do that guy there.
So realistically, you don't necessarily need to be an expert in 3D to do this stuff, right? You could get yourself, a headset and start just playing around with it. Do you think there's much of a learning curve to it?
You know what? Not for this, because I'm not a modeling expert. I was doing texturing, so this is my forte. So I was just able to come in here, and you can see what I'm doing. Like I'm not trying to be a perfect modeler, but I was able to come in really quickly and just start having a bit of fun with it. And because of the lack of features and buttons and all the rest of it, all I'm doing is taking this piece of clay and being able to create a cool little character, right? That he's just running around. So you don't have to have a lot of knowledge in this. Actually, I was showing my son this last night, and I was just like, I just opened up for him, and he was like, oh my goodness, I can do this. And it's amazing how quickly he picked it up. It was great. It was awesome.
Excuse me. And how old's your son?
He's 8.
There you go.
So there's a couple of little characters there, and if I go back into the selection tool, I can select on that guy, and I'll bring him over here, and I'm just going to select him, and bring that up. All right, so we've got the selection. I'm going to just go across my menu there and select it.
There's probably about 25 minutes left.
Okay, cool. So what I wanted to show, that's perfect. What I wanted to show you here, we've got our little character. So I'm going to take my headset off, and I'm going to bring it back across to the desktop. So now I'm transitioning out of my headset back into the desktop, and you can see we've got our little character here, which is awesome. So if I wanted to come through and modify him even further, I could. Wow, it's amazing just how big those arms are. I didn't even realize that. Yeah. So I've got my one that I did earlier. So if we have a bit more focus on him, and I'm just going to zoom in, I can hit F on the keyboard, and you can see there I've dinted him up. I've added a few little bits and pieces to it. Now I've gone up here and I've gone File, Export Mesh, a few different options here. I can go, that's import I've got. I want to go File, Export, and then I can do FBX, OBJ, a few different file formats for Substance Painter. And I'm just going to change my mic back because I know Joanna's probably saying that in the background. So I can change, I export this out as an FBX file. I can increase the polygon count, which just basically means that it's going to make sure it holds all that definition and just nice modeling that I've done there. And I can export that out. So I've done my job in Modeler. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just quickly launch Substance Painter. And I've got that sitting over here. I can just do that. And I'm going to close down Modeler. So this is the next application in the Substance tool set. So I'm going to close out of that and just minimize that screen. And we've got Substance Painter just launching here.
So what's interesting is you're essentially showing us, the 3D pipeline, right? You've modeled something, you've created something from scratch using 3D Modeler in a virtual reality environment. Once you've got that model, you've exported it out into Substance Painter, and this is where you apply materials to it to actually bring it to life. There it is.
Exactly.
Alfalfa the robot.
Yeah. So you can do some alfalfa. So you can do some basic, painting with inside Modeler, but actually I use that painting just to be able to break out areas and just define in my head, okay, that's that section and that's that section. But once you bring it into something like Substance Painter, this is where I get to add those cool materials. So if I just minimize that for a sec, so this is, if I wanted to add him and just to add a gold material on here, then I can just simply drag and drop and I've got that base gold material. If I wanted to add some sort of, any type of material, I can. So I've got that sort of, what's that one called? That carbon fiber type one. So if I actually just increase that, so you can see there, I'm just adding sections to materials to the overall model here. Now I'm going to go through and I just want to add. There's some really easy options here in terms of adding these materials, and there's this button up the top here and it's called Smart Materials. Mm-hmm. So what these are actually materials that have been have got a lot of work added to them. So if, for example, if I scroll down, there's different fabrics, there's metals, there's dirt, and there's dust. There's all types of materials here. Now there's one that I'm looking for, which is a shiny gold paint, and it's this machinery one here. I'm just adding this on top of it. It's already added some dirt and grime and dust and all the rest of it to it. So I can drop into that folder that it's created for me. I haven't had to do anything. It's done it all for me. So I can come back into that base material and go, actually, I don't want it to be yellow. I want it to be more of a metallic, dark metal type thing. And I want to make sure that it looks like he's a little bit older. So I can actually take away some of that reflectiveness. I've kind of got this, duller metal type character here.
Yeah, adding more roughness to it.
Exactly, adding more roughness to it. So he could be completely dull or he could be completely shiny. So I'm just dialing that back a little bit, and then I'm pretty happy with that. I'm happy with that look. So I could, if I wanted to, I could go back in and maybe adjust the rust, and I can just do that because there's a mask set up for me. If I click on that mask, it'll just say, hey, how much rust do you want to have on this? So I can just control that by using this one slider. So I can either get rid of it all or have them, fully rusted up, which is pretty cool. So once I'm kind of
just on that, right? So they're just essentially the materials that are substance materials that are baked into the products, and then we can, if there's more, like you can access more. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you were to go to, the asset library, which is a web-based asset library, in here you've got all these high-quality materials that you can simply just download and be able to drag and drop onto our material, onto our model. So if I was looking for more metals, for example, I could come in here and just be able to download one of these metals and drag and drop it onto our 3D character. That's how easy we've made it to be able to do. You don't even have to make these up. We make it for you. So it's pretty cool. Now, the next phase that I want to do, once I'm happy with that, I can actually just go, all right, cool. I'm going to send that across to a next application, which is Stager. And I'm going to go send to Stager. It's going to take our material there. It's going to take our model. It's going to launch Substance Stager. And we're able to add some lights and able to do some final renders and some images and stuff. So I'm going to just close out of Substance Painter. Like I said, it's so much fun in here, Chris. Like it's just, simple drag and drop, any of these materials.
And it's got a similar feel to Photoshop. We've spoken about this in the past, but I mean, the fact that let's just say I'm a traditional 2D designer and I use Photoshop and Illustrator for things, but I want to venture into 3D from a learning perspective, it shouldn't be that daunting because the panel system's similar, the materials act as like layers that open up a bit further that you can just adjust and set. So technically, from a learning perspective, I should know the tools, right?
Absolutely. There's I mean, and that's the beauty of the tools. It's right. It's people jump into it and they're like, oh, that's pretty familiar. I actually see what that's all about. So, and it's such an easy learning curve. So you can see there that we've got our model now inside of Stager, which is great. So I just scaled that up a little bit. I'm just going to bring him to the ground plane, and you can see there that little blue line, which signifies that he's actually touching the ground there, or he's actually just a little bit off it. So I'm going to just bring him down a little bit because I've offset the legs. And what I want to do here is just show people how easy it is to be able to bring in an image and literally match the lighting for it. So if I go into libraries and I'm connected to my libraries here, there's an image that I've downloaded from Adobe Stock or any other place. It doesn't have to be Stock, but you can just bring that in. And I've got an image here, and I'm just going to drag and drop that into the viewport. And what it's going to do is it's going to create a camera for me. You can see he's floating in midair now, but there's one button here called Match Image. If I click on that, it's going to ask me, oh, do you want to, match the camera aspect ratio? Do you want to create some lights? I just want to hit yes. I want to do all that. I don't want to muck around trying to control this stuff. So then I can just place him down on the ground there and hide that grid. And you can see he's quite dark because the light source is behind us. So what I want to do there is actually go into my lights, so into my environment. And you can see if I'm in my lights, it's using that image to light my object now. So I can rotate that round.
So you're changing the light source based on the image. Is that right?
So that that image is lighting our character. So I can then just tweak a few bits and pieces here. Are you still with me, Chris? Because I just skipped a little bit. You still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. You can hear me, yeah?
Yeah, perfect.
So
cool.
I have a question. So see that big pumpkin on the left with the lights showing through his eyes and mouth. It's just gone now for a second. I don't know why.
I'm here. Yep.
Yeah, but the image is gone. I can only see the robot.
Oh, okay, cool. You can only see the robot. Maybe it'll come back in a sec.
My question was, can you use that pumpkin, the light? Here we go. The light showing through the pumpkin as a light source reflecting onto the robot.
Yeah, so there's a couple of different ways that I can do that. You can see there I've got colorized down the bottom here, so I can click on that, pull some of this orange color, and we can use some of that to actually influence the actual light. So maybe I want it a little bit more orange. So we can just tweak that slightly. And is it still holding up there, Chris?
Yeah, I think maybe because ray tracing is on, maybe switch off. Yeah.
I think you're right. So let me just, because it's trying to render in real time as well as do the lighting. So let me just flick that off for a sec because it'll bring it back. Okay, cool. So yeah, we're able to then use this colorize option down here and just select some of that orange that we want, that you were talking about, to be able to have some influence on the lighting there. So maybe I want to kick up the intensity. I can rotate those lights around a little bit.
Yeah.
And then I've still got 3 lights that sets up for me. So the key light, for example, maybe I want to bring some of that color in there as well, or I want to bring some of the blue in. So I can, again, just sample off that, off the back image to be able to do that, right? So I'm just mixing up my images here. Bit of fill. Maybe for this one, I want to bring some of that orange in. And I can tweak how intense that is. So I can start really just trying to integrate the 3D character. Once I'm in a really good position, I can move this guy wherever I want. I can add some depth of field to the camera, so maybe I'm going to introduce some of that. I can select on my little robot character there and say, okay, cool, this is going to be the main focus. I want to just introduce some depth of field. Now, I'm not going to turn on ray tracing because it's going to kill my machine and probably kill the
yeah, don't do that.
Well, but if I'm at a good point now, I'm happy with the lighting, I can come up to render and be able to either save it as a PNG or a flat image, or I can save it out as a Photoshop file. So I've got a few different options there.
Okay, so you can actually save it as a Photoshop file, and then if I were to save it as a Photoshop file, why would I do that?
Yeah, good question. What it does is it actually saves out a whole bunch of layers. It creates these secondary layers in a Photoshop file for me, which means that when I open that Photoshop file up, I can go in and I can actually select parts of this 3D model. Or if I wanted to still separate out my 3D model from my background, it's all broken down into layers for me. So it gives me all of that for free. I don't even have to worry about that. So it's what it's telling me is that, okay, if I wanted to do some post-production work in Photoshop, even after I've finished my render, I don't have to go all the way back into Stager to be able to do a new render. So that's really cool.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, and then, so just to kind of bring people, how much time do we have left, Chris?
About 8 minutes or so.
Okay, cool. So I just wanted to show what the actual the robot character looked like in terms of when I did a render. So we've seen that in the back. So I've just got that little image there. So I've got reference, and oh yeah, so there was the option to be able to add that little heart shape, which I did as well. So we've got the background, we had our concept art, and that's kind of the final render here, which is just being pulled up here, which is the one that I did from Stager. I used a mask inside Painter to be able to add that little heart, but you saw how easy it was to take it out of Modeler, bring it into Painter, add a material, drag and drop, move that across into Stager, add that image, match up some of the lighting with it, boom, done your render.
And I noticed as well, he's got a shadow on him, underneath him. There's like reflection. How did you apply that?
So in here, inside your environment, you've got, if I go back to the environment and the sort of the ground here, there's a reflection option here. Because I'm not in ray tracing, you're not going to see that. But my reflection, I can then kick this up or go, reflectivity, so it can be fully reflective on the bottom here and just bring up your character so it's reflecting on that base on the ground, which is super cool.
Cindy Lyons in the chat just said that there's buffering issues. Hopefully it's fixed now, Cindy. But when Alwyn switches ray tracing on, which basically uses a lot of the CPU, and it could have been that as the issue, but we've switched it off now, so we're all good.
Yeah, back to your point at the start of the show was making sure you've got hardware that is able to support this type of.
There you go. Right.
Yeah, right. So last thing, or a couple other things I want to point out here. So I've got created a second camera here. So I've got this little button option up the time to create a new camera. If I wanted to change the resolution of this, I can just simply click on up the top here or on the side, be able to drag that to, maybe I wanted to do an Instagram post, make that 1024 by 1024, then I can just quickly change that, 1024, and I can quickly change between my various cameras with my different resolutions, which is really helpful to get multiple, renders out of various sizes.
So you mentioned social, right? Would there be, I suppose, room for preset sizes that could potentially be in something like Stager? As in, I want to get it down on Instagram social, so I want to add it. I just want that, or I want Twitter, or I want Facebook, or whatever it is. Could that be something that I just set up, or would I render one and then do it through like Adobe Express, for example?
Yeah, so there are no sort of social media templates at the moment, but there are what they call these environment stages. So if I was to drag and drop one of these into, and you'll see what happens in the layer stack over here. So basically it's going to create a whole series of cameras for me. And you can see there it's using this environment, and that guy's pretty small. So let's just scale him up again. I'm going to hit R on the keyboard, bring him up to something like that. And it's dropped this image in the background, and it's already by default created a whole bunch of different resolutions and cameras for me. You could imagine if this was a product and somebody wanted to showcase their product, then it already creates this, a lot of this stuff for us.
And you can position those cameras anywhere.
Yeah, so you can see they're locked off at the moment. So if I unlock this one, for example, and then I could just, position my character however I want at this point as well. So it's locking off the image, but it's actually, I can still move things around if need be.
Interesting. Now, I have a question in the chat. What would be really interesting is how you would animate this from this stage. How would you actually apply animation to this character? Yeah,
that would be a really interesting concept. Stager is this program here, Stager, that we're in, is going to have some basic animation very, very soon. So that's really exciting. But when we're talking about animating and rigging and doing things like that, then you're either going to Mixamo. So like for those people that have never seen Mixamo before, I'll just come up here.
I was gonna actually ask you about Mixamo.
Yeah, so I'm just going to drop into Mixamo here.
You got about 3 or 4 minutes to go.
Okay, cool, awesome.
Any questions in the chat, please feel free to add them in while we having a look at Mixamo, because this is a really cool tool.
Yeah, so you could take, and I'm going to have to log in just really quickly there, but you can take that character that we've just modeled. I'm just going to, I think I don't, do I have to use just personal account? That's it. And get rid of that. Yeah. So you could take that character that we've just modeled and textured, and then bring them into Mixamo, and this is where you can add some basic bones to be able to animate this character. And the cool thing with Mixamo is it's completely free. You see here, you can upload a character, or you can, like for those people that don't have a character, then you can use the sort of the library of characters that are in here. The great thing is that if I've got my own character, say I've got this guy with the axe, for example, he's got this animation that's already assigned. Well, it's actually, I've selected that animation. So I might go back up the top here and select a different character. And I'll do this guy, use this character, and then I can mix and match my character with the various animation loops that are happening in here. So it's a really quick way to be able to upload a character that you've done, add some rigs to it, add some bones to it to be able to add these animations to it. So yeah.
So at the moment, it looks like Mixamo is a web-based application, but is this what you were referring to earlier? Perhaps we could see this come to Stager, or?
Not really. They're still very independent. No, there's no talk about doing that at the moment. But
Okay.
I think the fact that you could still take it out of Stager and bring it into something like this, it sort of still stays. It's pretty basic, but if you wanted to, you can export out the animations and then bring that into something like Maya or Blender with your character and all the rest of it. And that's where you would, if you wanted to take the animation to that next level, you can still take it out of here and still be able to work up that animation and other external programs.
Awesome. So we've got a couple of minutes to go, but I've got a couple more questions for you, specifically around 3D modeler in the future. So if I'm a creative and, I'm a 2D traditional artist working in perhaps a corporate role, wherever I may be, why would I want to use 3D? Why would I want to use 3D modeler?
Well, it's probably a great form of stress relief to start with.
Yeah.
But I think as a 3D modeling application, it's a great entry level tool, right? So if you are new to 3D and you're like, oh my goodness, it's always been this thing that's been so unachievable that I've never, I've got the psychological barrier that I just know that I can't do it. Substance 3D Modeler is one of those, like I just showed you today. You just get in there and you just start having fun, and then through that fun, you're actually learning concepts, and you're like, oh, okay, cool. What does that mean, right? So it's a really great place to start. And in fact, I was talking to somebody the other week about this. I would first work on the 3D modeling desktop application and just start getting familiar there, because once you move into the VR space, it's just now adding another level. But in terms of the desktop application, it's so easy to use.
Yeah.
And you pick it up real quick. And
That's awesome.
And just if we're looking at my screen here, there's a whole bunch of first steps into Substance 3D Modeler for the desktop here. These are really quick. Talk about the tools, talk about some of the stuff that I've already mentioned, but you can go through. By the time you've watched all these, you have a really good understanding of what you need to do. It doesn't get complicated. It's just about having fun.
I love that. And just my final question, I know we're about to wrap, but would you say that there's more of a demand for 3D with obviously the ever fast approaching metaverse?
I've never seen a time like this. In all my 20 plus years in working in 3D and visual effects, right now is an absolute golden time for people getting into 3D. I'm just going to stop sharing, Chris, and I'll come across, mate, and just bring myself across here. But yeah, it's an absolute golden period right now for getting into 3D. So, and what we're seeing is that skill set that you're learning is also, you're able to transcend across different industries, right? So you're learning 3D that, you know, could be relatable in fashion design, for example, because now there's a big movement into digital fashion. So it's an extremely exciting time to be getting into 3D.
Awesome. Thanks, Alwyn. We've got to wrap. Thanks so much for showing us that. I can't wait to get in and start trying it. And thank you, everyone, for joining us, and hopefully see you soon.
Yeah, man.